Good morning. I'd like to call the City Council meeting to order. We'll begin by doing the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mayor Pro Tem Redner.
Everyone please rise. Right hands over your heart. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, may we do a roll call?
Mayor Francisco,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Renner,
Present.
Councilmember Miko,
Present.
Councilmember Saltz,
Present.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Present.
Council, do we have any comments on any general items? Councilmember Rodriguez.
Hello. I would like to address an issue with jaywalking. It is common amongst the Gardner Middle School and Great Oak High School area, and I was just curious if there's any solutions that can be proposed, such as possible bridge overpasses for students to use, or maybe additionally adding more crosswalks.
Councilmember Saltz.
I would just like to thank all the other council members, the actual council members, for letting us do this today. It's been a great opportunity.
Councilmember Miko.
I'd like to notice that I want to add more stuff for teenagers to do on Saturday night so they can have more activities to make Temecula an even better place than it already is.
Mayor Pro Tem Renner.
I would like to note that the TVUSD high schools, including Chaparral High School most recently, just completed every 15 minutes, where staff and students alike participated in a car crash scene that was forged to appear as if teenagers were driving under the influence while going to prom, and it resulted in the faked death of 3 students and a faculty member. It was a huge eye-opener for a great deal of students on campus, and it was a great use of community involvement to really impact these students and try to make everyone come home safe as prom season concludes.
And I just wanted to say that I'm very pleased with the new park that's opened on Red Hawk Parkway. It's special needs friendly, and I think that's a great thing for our community. Now, the first item on our agenda is item 1, to consider and provide general direction regarding amendments to ordinance number 1702, an ordinance of the City of Temecula related to cannabis. May I please have a staff report?
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members, for attending this meeting. Currently, right now, staff is requesting the procedural direction from City Council regarding changes, if necessary, to City Cannabis Ordinance 1702, regulations pertaining to the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, Proposition 64. So far, we concluded our research with the state regulations with Prop 64. On November 8, 2016, California voters approved the Proposition 64, a statewide initiative titled Control, Regulate, and Tax Adult Use of Marijuana Act, also known as ALMA. ALMA allows cities to regulate marijuana-related activities and marijuana businesses, allows cities to adopt local ordinances banning marijuana business in their jurisdiction, establishes laws regulating marijuana distribution, sale, use, and cultivation, establishes the options for cities to impose and exercise a tax on the sale of recreational marijuana and cultivation tax. It also allows individuals can possess, process, and transport, purchase, obtain, or give away persons 21 years of age or older up to 28.5 grams of marijuana for recreational use. Possess, plant, cultivate, harvest, dry, or process not more than 6 marijuana plants and possess the marijuana produced by the plants. Smoke or ingest marijuana or marijuana products. Possess, transport, purchase, obtain, use, manufacture, or give away marijuana accessories to persons 21 years of age or older. However, ALMA prohibits smoking or ingest marijuana or marijuana products in any public place, smoking marijuana or marijuana products in 1, a location where tobacco is prohibited, and 2, within, and I believe that is a typo, 600 feet of a school, daycare center, or youth center while children are present at a school, daycare, or youth center. Smoking or ingest marijuana products or possess an open container or open package of marijuana or marijuana products while driving, and manufacture concentrated cannabis using volatile solvent without a proper license. I'd like to go to my assistant member here.
Thank you. Thank you, Council. In response to AUMA, or AUMA, the City of Temecula adopted Ordinance 1702, May 9th of last year. This ordinance prohibits commercial marijuana activity, meaning the cultivation, possession, manufacture, distribution, processing, storing, laboratory testing, labeling, transportation, delivery, or sale of marijuana and marijuana products, whether or not for profit. Ordinance 1702 does allow cultivation of no more than 6 plants per household for recreational use. Plants must be within a fully enclosed and secured accessory structure or primary residence. Cultivation of no more than 12 plants per household for medical use by patients and caregivers. This ordinance has one exception, and that is for the delivery of medical cannabis to qualified patients or caregivers holding valid county-issued medical marijuana cards. Ordinance 1702 does not allow for delivery of recreational cannabis to any patient. I would like to call up the Public Works Department.
So what Public Works and what we've been working on is with our prior restrictions to alcoholic beverages in public streets, roadways, boulevards, alleys, parking lots, and etc. What we want to do if marijuana is legalized is to add marijuana onto this list, and that's my recommendation to the council. And that's not only for alcoholic beverages, but also for smoking and cigarettes that are already being used, with those two already being legalized and having their own restrictions. And then what John was talking about earlier with that 600-foot buffer, we were also considering maybe increasing that buffer if we are to legalize it, just to have a safer zone in the areas like preschools, schools, kid zones, religious institutions. That's my pitch for that. But also, what we were talking about was with marijuana, if being legalized, just informing the HOA as well with that, giving them a recommendation of what their restrictions should be, since they already have their restrictions on alcoholic beverages and smoking as well. And that concludes my presentation. I'd like to turn it over to Economic Development Report and Sawyer Lowe.
Good morning, Council. I'm Sawyer Lowe from the Office of Economic Development. And what we did is we worked extensively with our business community, in particular the Temecula Valley Chamber of Commerce, and it's over 1,000 business members. And they expressed 4 major concerns with this particular ordinance. The first of that being Temecula's reputation. Over the past 29 years, Temecula has built a reputation as a family-friendly and business-friendly city, and their concern was, what would the legalization of dispensaries and the amendments to this ordinance do to that reputation? The second and third both have to do with the workforce. The first being, how will it affect the current workforce and the human resource relationship that they have, and the policy changes that will be forced to make. And the third is the youth. How will it affect the future workforce and their ability to stay active in the workforce, as well as stay active in their schoolworks. The fourth point that the businesses were concerned about was, how will it affect their ability to cover costs, as well as the idea that technically marijuana at a federal level is still not legal. So at any point in time, a business that associates with themselves with cannabis can be shut down at a federal level. So that superficial business is not sustainable. And those are the 4 major concerns that our local businesses have, and we wanted to express those to you today. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
So the next department that will be coming up with their report is the police department.
Since the November 2016 election, California voters legalized recreational use of marijuana. The legalization of marijuana allows adults 21 years of age to possess, process, transport, purchase, and obtain up to 28.5 grams of marijuana. The use of marijuana must be done on private property. In Temecula, the police department's quick response to the ordinance is to treat it as a misdemeanor. For example, if someone is caught using marijuana on public property instead of private property, they will not face major consequences. The police will simply issue them a citation, city code violation. In Temecula, dispensaries are illegal but not on criminal level. Dispensaries that operate in Temecula do not have the correct business license in order to be a legal business. Police work together with fire and code enforcement to regulate any dispensaries in the area. Fire helps police get into dispensaries since they do not need a warrant to enter the premises, and code enforcement helps with the civil and city code violations of the business, and police provide protection. Together, all 3 departments regulate dispensaries. I further turn over to my lieutenant.
Thank you. In addition, accompanying crime will increase as well. Some advocating for change to legalize dispensaries could use it as a drug trade, and we do not want that in Temecula. It'll attract people that have the drug trade. Also, other crime will rise as well, especially those that occur during a robbery. For example, a city nearby in Riverside County recently dealt with a triple shooting and homicide at a dispensary. Do we really want to bring this criminal to Temecula? Finally, a main issue in Temecula is homelessness. Legalizing these dispensaries could create hubs for these individuals to hang around. It not only puts neighboring businesses at risk because the homeless here are typically the main culprits of robbery and stealing, but it also gives them an easier way to feed addiction and spend their money on drugs instead of turning their lives around. Chief.
In conclusion, we believe that the quality of life right now in Temecula is at an all-time high, and any major change could greatly compromise this, making the streets less safe for our Temecula residents who we serve. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to hand this off to the fire department.
Hello, thank you. So this is the impacts on the fire department. So some of the hazards that we currently see with any existing marijuana dispensary or grow house is that marijuana, when it is grown, it takes lights that have a high amperage, and with those lights comes a greatly increased risk for fires. So that is extremely dangerous and puts a high risk for those buildings and the people working inside. Another thing that is common in dispensaries and grow houses is they use magnetic locks, which are not tied to a fire alarm system. So in the event of an emergency, the locks in the building would not release and they would still remain locked. Again, greatly increasing the risk for people to get hurt or otherwise. And for the process of extracting THC from the cannabis plant, there's many chemicals that are extremely dangerous, and many dispensaries we see don't have proper permits to perform these extractions on the plant. And the actual extraction process involves many volatile chemicals that are extremely dangerous, and if handled incorrectly, they can explode or cause a fire. And that is all for the fire department. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next off in the presentation, I would like to hand this off to the Department Head of Community Services, Waleed Kharifa.
Thank you, John. Hello.
Oh,
Thank
it's
you.
not.
Appreciate it. Sorry about that. Thank you again, John, and hello, council and staff. We at the Community Services Department have had a huge emphasis in our report on the overall effects that cannabis has had and will continue to have in the foreseeable future on our community. I would like to pass to my associate Chino, my superintendent, who will deliver the background information on the ordinance 1702 and its effect on our community.
Thank you, Waleed. Mayor, council members. Ultimately, the primary objective of our Community Services Department is to create opportunities for the community to get involved. For example, we have the 4th of July event, we have live outdoor concerts, and we have the Rod Run. All are proved to have high attendance rates. At such large-scale events, safety is our #1 priority. It is our responsibility to protect all who attend these functions. A number of precautions we may take include teaming up with the Temecula Police Department, the Fire Department, and the Park Rangers to ensure a secure area and alertness on site. In the aforementioned 4th of July event, this collaboration is vital, considering the variety of problems imminent. The reality of this situation is that at any moment there could be a shooting or a fire, and we must be prepared for that. With multiple life-threatening catastrophes that could potentially occur, someone smoking cannabis on site is not included on that list. We agree anyone recreationally smoking cannabis at an event reflects negatively upon the city, and we currently do not tolerate this type of behavior. However, we still expect this type of illegal activity and will always plan accordingly. But this issue is not our primary concern in relation to possible conflicts. If the amendment to allow commercial cannabis activity is passed, we anticipate an increase in cannabis use and complaints during public events. And as previously mentioned, we are always prepared to maintain a secure and safe environment. Rightfully so, we assume that the teenage consumption of marijuana will increase if we permit a commercialized cannabis industry. However, according to the Washington Post, in Colorado, after legalization of recreational use of cannabis, the teenage use of the drug fell 3% to its lowest point in nearly a decade. Although different cultures play a factor in drug use, these stats prove hopeful to our community if this amendment is passed. Regarding our senior community, it could very well possibly be beneficial, and studies have shown that senior use of cannabis may prove to increase their quality of life. In regard to the homeless community, which right now consists of 67 people, we presume a negative effect on both them and our community. If the commercialization of cannabis is allowed, dispensaries around Temecula would act as a magnet for this homeless society. And we may expect an increase in our homeless community as well if dispensaries are established in Temecula. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chino, for the report. I also wanted to pass it to my management analyst, Topher, for any additional information that we have found. Thank you, Topher.
Thank you, Waleed. Thank you, council members. Cannabis has just recently been legalized in 2018. As a majority of our events have been family-oriented and targeted towards a younger demographic so far into this year, we've seen very little to no cannabis usage. I sure hope at the daddy-daughter dance that there won't be any. However, as the year progresses, we will have concerts, the Rod Run, and the 4th of July Bash, which have significantly higher chance of cannabis usage. We'll have police, fire, and park rangers to ensure that the rules of no smoking cannabis in public is enforced. In the past, even these large-scale events have had little to no cannabis usage at them. We believe and hope that this trend should continue through 2018 and beyond.
Thank you, Topher. All in all, we see that cannabis usage will continue to trend in the foreseeable future, and we do not see any additional effects. Anyways, we are open to any questions that the council will have. And thank you.
Thank you, Waleed. So that concludes our staff report and all. The staff is requesting the council to consider the following. A request for procedural direction from the City Council regarding changes, if necessary, to City Ordinance 1702, regulations pertaining to the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, Proposition 64 ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions on the topic discussed during the staff report? Mayor Pro Tem Renner?
I have a question for the city manager. I'm curious if we are to proceed with lifting the ban, which aspects the staff recommends we include as far as growing, manufacturing, distributing, and or testing, which of those we would allow within our city?
As John as the community head, I will pass that on to him in accordance with the Ordinance 1702 and Prop 64.
So in Ordinance 1702, this, let's see here. In 1702, the prohibitions, it requires any commercial activity, meaning cultivation, possession, manufacture, distribution, processing, storing, laboratory testing, labeling, transportation, delivery, or sale of marijuana and marijuana products, whether for profit or not, it is completely prohibited within Temecula. However, 1702 does allow cultivation no more than 6 plants per household. Plants must be within fully enclosed and secure accessory structure or primary residence. Cultivation of no more than 12 plants per household for medical use by patients and caregivers. And the only exception to our law that prevents delivery is it allows delivery of medical cannabis to qualified patients or caregivers holding a valid county-issued medical marijuana card. But it does not allow any delivery of recreational use marijuana. Thank you.
Councilmember Saltz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to pose a question to Mr. Mann about, you mentioned how when they grow indoors, they have a lack of necessary fire regulations. So would you recommend, if we were to propose the growing of marijuana, it would be outdoors instead of indoors?
In regards to that matter, right now the fire department does not have any recommendation for that, just that when it is grown inside, that there is, and when the certain lights are used to grow it, there is a higher risk for fire, and there's higher risk for just explosions too. If it were to be grown outside, we see that marijuana is a very needy plant. So when it is grown, it does have the effect on surrounding plants, because marijuana takes a lot of water, and it affects the soil in a way that is detrimental to other plants. So whether or not it should be grown inside or outside, we have no recommendation, but those are the potential outcomes.
Thank you. And I also have a question for you. You mentioned that there are magnetic locks that they use when they're growing indoors. Is there a specific reason for that, or is it easily changed to something that can be more useful, or that can change the fire?
So part of the reason that magnetic locks are used is in the past, when marijuana was illegal, magnetic locks are harder to get by. So when there was illegal operations going and police or any other agency would try to enter, the magnetic locks wouldn't get passed by as easily. So right now, it would be safer if those were to be replaced, or if they were connected to the fire alarm system. So if there was an emergency and the fire alarm system went off, the magnetic locks would release. There is a chance for those two systems to be connected. So, yeah.
So it's an easy fix to change it from being such a fire hazard?
Yeah.
Councilmember Miko?
I have a question for anyone on the staff that can answer this. If we were to legalize cannabis use, where would be the best position for it to be in either commercial, recreational, or an industrial area?
Thank you, Councilman. As of right now, what we are looking for is direction from the council and from the mayor for this issue. We don't have any. We're not having a opinion towards what this should be, what we're looking for. This is more of just this is an issue for y'all to decide and for you guys to make up. We're just asking direction at this point. Thank you.
And is there anyone of the staff that can answer if there are something that the citizens can do that can help, the chief of police or the fire department or any kind of law enforcement with, the whereabouts of any locations that there are being the usage of drug that's illegal, for example, on a public property?
I would like to hand this off to the police department.
Soon there will be cameras in public parking where there will be drug activity will be monitored, whether it be the usage of on public property or the selling or the distributing of any type of marijuana use on public property. It will be monitored via cameras in public parks and parking lots and any other public roadways and all throughout Temecula in the city. Thank you.
Is there any way for the public to reach directly to someone who can handle the situation?
If someone is using marijuana on public property, they can call the police, and the police department will, the quick response is to go to the person using the marijuana, and they will issue them a citation if they're using it on public property.
Madam Mayor, if I may speak.
Yes.
Our IT director has just obtained some new information about this current topic that we're discussing, so if you may.
Yes, please.
Yes, so I do have information on where the location would be. So most likely, we would put it in the Light Industrial Center. So this would be farther down, not anywhere in a 600 feet radius from any schools, preschools, daycares, anything like that. Nowhere near residential areas. It would be in a highlighted zone in the residential area. If you actually look up there, you could see the potential areas. On the left side, you have the full view map of Temecula, and then on the right, you have the highlighted areas in which we'd put any type of dispensary, selling location, growing location, and that would be in the Light Industrial Center.
Thank you. Councilmember Rodriguez?
Hello, I had a question. I had a question for the police department as well, and it would be, what are the consequences for teenagers that are suspected or known of having possession of cannabis, since it's illegal for possession under the age of 21?
So under the age of 21, they won't be given a misdemeanor since they aren't of age at that point, but we will be trying our best to ensure that people who aren't over the age of 21 won't be able to buy and sell and grow and use marijuana.
And I know that you said that they're issued a citation if they're caught smoking on a public property. What is the consequence for distributing to a minor, or what would be?
I believe that all drug offenses are right now misdemeanors. They can range from any type of drug that's held at a state level as of right now, and anything further, we cannot charge them with anything other than a misdemeanor when it comes to drug offenses. That's held at a state level for it to change.
Mayor Pro Tem Renner?
So obviously we've talked about public safety and the fact that it is our city's #1 concern. As far as allowing marijuana, cannabis in recreational areas, I'm curious what the staff has recommended as far as regulations about having it in public places if we allow it for recreational use.
Thank you, Councilman Renner. So far, we are going off of the state law, what ALMA specifically states, which is that, let's see here, it is the, it prohibits, ALMA prohibits smoking or ingesting marijuana or marijuana products in any public place. So we have to follow the state ordinance under like a supremacy clause. So what we're looking for is, what are we going to do? Like, what will y'all decide under the city ordinance and what we can do?
Councilmember Rodriguez?
I have a question for the Economic Development Department. I was curious, what are the consequences for employees that are under the influence of marijuana while on the job?
That's where there's a lot of confusion because currently their employees are allowed to implement a drug-free policy, so you can be fired for testing positive, but the effects of marijuana on the human body is still because they can last from anywhere from 2 to 24 hours. So there's a lot of confusion in that aspect on how businesses will be able to approach it, because if they're implement a drug-free policy, it just creates a headache in the human resource department for businesses, because there's no clear line on how they can approach it if it's illegal at the federal level, but legal at the state and city level. So there's no real answer to that question that I can give to you at this time, because it would be up to the business's discretion.
Councilmember Miko?
So I have a question for the economic department. If we were to implement it, what would be like the total cost for legalizing it for either in total?
Madam Mayor, very quickly before the economic department, our IT department has new information again.
Oh, well, let's wait until after the economic development.
May you restate your question, please?
So what would be the total cost for implementing the legalization of cannabis, for like allowing dispensaries to come in, like building their new?
Well, the costs vary greatly, because obviously we have the police, the cost for the police and fire department to implement their regulations and inspections. And also one of the major concerns for the businesses is that the cost will, in the long run, outweigh the benefits of it, because obviously it will bring in lots of tax revenue, as well as it will promote small businesses for the time being. But there's no real long run. We can't judge the cost, because there's not enough information out there, because it's such a new topic, considering that Washington and Colorado have just legalized it within the past 2 to 3 years. So we don't have any cemented information on what the cost would be in the long run. In the short run, we definitely would have an increased tax revenue based off cannabis sales, but how will that affect our other businesses? We don't know.
Thank you, and we'll hear from the IT director now.
Yes, so regarding public safety and what any type of illegal activity that would go on with cannabis, we do have PSAs to inform citizens, any type of citizens, on education, marijuana usage, regulations that go on, business applications on how to fill them out. We are able to do that in the IT section. We also have police surveillance too, so surveillance in public facilities, and the exteriors of bathrooms, anywhere like that. So any type of illegal activity going on, we will have security going on. And we do have patrolling with the police homeless outreach officers and park rangers through radio communications with dispatch and the command center surveillance. So any type of illegal activity going on, the police will be able to take that over. Any type of violation that does occur and without a officer available, if this is violation of code, we do have the Temecula application, city application, and where people can, any type of citizen can report an issue or contact any violation, and we'll just add that to another one on the list. If it's a cannabis-related issue, if it's selling illegally, there'll be any type of citizen will be able to report that violation.
Thank you. Councilmember Saltz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a question for Ms. Sharon. It mentions in the prohibition, that smoke or ingesting marijuana or marijuana projects or possessing an open container while driving or operating or riding in a vehicle is illegal. How would officers be able to tell if somebody had been ingesting marijuana? Is there an effective means to do so?
So as of right now, the police department is working to have our officers know the signs of marijuana, whether or not to tell if a person is driving under the influence. It's very different than alcohol, it's very different than any other drug. So we're working to train our officers in that technique and being able to identify if a driver is under the influence of marijuana and to treat them accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions, any other questions from the councilman? Okay, so now this is the time to set aside for public comments regarding agenda item 1. Request to speak form may be filed with the city clerk, and each speaker is limited to 5 minutes. Madam Clerk, may we have the first speaker, please?
Our first member of our community to speak is Agent Smith, who will be followed by Dr. Pillpusher.
Hello, my name is Agent Smith and I work for a clandestine government agency. Yesterday, all of you up front took the oath of office. The oath of office to the U.S. Constitution, the oath of office to the California Constitution, and the oath of office to your people. And by today, by any change to these ordinances, you can't undo what the state's done wrong. But you have an obligation to do what the federal Constitution says you should do. I want you to think about some other things. What if I'm walking down the street, someone's smoking marijuana, and they puff it in my face? I'm a federal official. I have federal obligations. If I get drug tested, I lose my job. My kids, little FBI and little CIA, they aren't going to be fed, and that's your responsibility. I moved to Temecula for more family, and you have federal obligations. That is all.
Thank you, Agent Smith. Madam Clerk, the next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Dr. Pillpusher, who will be followed by Mr. Dad.
Good evening, Mayor. It's Dr. Phil Pusher. I'm sorry, my writing is terrible. It's unfortunate. Good evening. I own the largest pharmaceutical company in North America, and I represent over 100 corporations, including several shell corporations located in the Cayman Islands, for tax purposes. I'm here today to strongly encourage you all to vote no on allowing cannabis in your city. If you'll all remember, I've given each of you guys $1 million for your election campaign. True, I gave $1 million to your competitors, but still, you guys are the lucky ones, you won. So I expect results. My company, as well as the ones I represent, have invested billions on making opioids extremely addictive and expensive. Millions of Americans are now addicted to our products, and now our consumer base is at risk. With this relatively cheap, natural pain reliever that has none of the side effects of our current opioids, think of the industries that will be affected by your decision. Hospitals, chemo centers, opioid addiction centers, Billy and his van in Hemet. All of these people stand to lose their jobs. I urge you, hold on, I'm getting a call. Yeah, hello? No, go ahead, I'm okay to talk. Yeah. Really? Okay. Cool, thanks, bye. So, sorry about that. I just got word that we now own the patent to cannabis. So now I stand to make about a couple $2 billion, so please vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Phil Pusher. Madam Clerk, the next speaker, please.
Our next and final speaker is Mr. Dad.
Madam Mayor, Council, thank you, and staff. As a dad to 4 kids. I'm against this proposition. You can see statistics that say, yes, it's teen usage will drop and teen usage will increase. It's too young or too new of a process to be able to support it and say we know what's going to happen. Marijuana is still a gateway drug. It's still being used improperly by people that claim medical, and it outweighs the people that are there for. We have a known product here in Temecula, and that is a family-friendly area with great schools, great parks, great services. And if we change it by adding marijuana, who knows what we're going to get? We can become crime-ridden. We can gain money. We can lose money. Who knows? It's an unknown quantity. And I don't want to see that destroyed, because if it is legalized, I, along with other parents, will move out of this town because we're not going to expose our kids to this potential problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dad. That concludes our public comment portion. Council, what's your pleasure? Mayor Pro Tem Renner.
After hearing the different recommendations from our staff, even though they lacked a certain amount of opinion as to where we should proceed, I believe that they're trying to recover in any instance that we decide to vote yes on this. At the moment, I believe that it adversely changes the dynamic in our city and community, and believe that our staff would be having to do a lot of makeup work and a lot of protection for whatever we decide if we proceed with allowing this to become recreationally used.
Councilmember Saltz.
I believe that there's not enough data on this. You know, cops don't have any available effective means of measuring whether somebody is driving while under the influence of marijuana. They also lack in whether we should be, if we were to allow it, whether it would be better for it to grow outdoor or indoor. I think there's just simply not enough data here.
And Councilmember Miko.
I like to agree with Councilmembers Saltz and Renner. I believe that so far we have no idea of what's going to happen. Either it could be beneficial or it could be detrimental to our city. There's just not enough information, and it's just a way too new process. As we can see in Colorado, there were some ups with the economics, but there's also downs as crime goes up. And as you look in Oregon, their crime rate has stayed the same, but as you can see there, it seems that their morality has regressed a bit, as people will just go out into the streets and smoke wherever and whenever, and they seem to have no problem with that. And I'm not sure if we would allow this to happen in our city.
And Councilmember Rodriguez.
To an extent, I agree with Councilmember Saltz. I believe that something that we have not yet considered is the amount of jobs that opening dispensaries would make. I believe that it would take away business from any non-illicit, or my bad, it would take business away from illicit markets. And I think that those are the markets that we need to keep an eye out for if this ban were to be lifted, that instead of focusing now on what was once illegal, we have to focus on what truly is more illegal, which would be the black markets in this situation.
So do you think that by lifting the ban, it would create more jobs for the people in our city, which would take the jobs away from the black market?
I do believe so, and I also believe that it could possibly reduce our homeless population by providing employment for them.
Mayor Pro Tem Renner.
I respect your viewpoint on that, but I would have to disagree. I believe that compared to other states, we would pass more regulations, far more regulations than as far as not being able to smoke in public and different things, and that would continue to push the market underground. With all of the different taxes that we would continue to have on it, it would have, like I said before, an adverse effect. The taxes that we would have to put on it if we forced them to grow indoors, the cost of that alone would maintain a lot of illegal businesses happening in our city and make it extremely dangerous.
Councilmember Saltz.
I would like to respectfully disagree with Councilwoman Renner. I do think that people in the end would, if you had an illegal business as a dispensary, I do think it would probably outweigh the risks for the reward of no longer being an illegal operation, and you wouldn't have to face these threats of state and local law enforcement.
So you're saying that the black market or the under-the-table dealers would prefer it if it was legalized so that they wouldn't have to feel the risk of, law enforcement coming in on any day?
Arresting them, yes.
Right. Okay. Councilmember Miko?
I'd like to say that the ordinance that we already have in place seems to be working fine, as we have small problems with drug use, as we can see like in our high schools. Some people are still able to get their hands on it, but I believe that if we allow the legalization of it, more people will get more access to it, and then as you can see, like there's some data that shows teenagers will still not improve, but their rates will go higher for the use of drugs. And as people have said, it's a gateway drug, and I think if we allow this in our community, much more could happen.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
I'm also concerned a little bit about if the ban were to be lifted, the marketing of marijuana in our community. I know that there are different forms of marijuana, such as edibles, and most of the times those are in forms of snacks that are highly appealing to children, and that, I believe, is a concern that we should also address.
I do know that there's a campaign going on regarding the names of just the tobacco flavorings and how they can be appealing specifically to children. So I do believe that marketing and branding is an issue. Councilmember Stoltz?
I would also like to agree with Madam Mayor and Councilwoman Rodriguez that there is a targeting of children, and above all, our goal is to protect our community, and safety comes first. Similar to, tobacco or vape pens, how they have cotton candy, to appeal to children. I also noticed that there is the 600 feet from school daycare center or youth center, and if we were to legalize recreational marijuana, I would personally believe that it should be at least 1,000 feet.
Right. I agree. Mayor Pro Tem Renner?
I think the manufacturing within our community creates a dangerous environment for people to be able to get their hands on that to increase crime rates. But also, if we are to allow the recreational use of this, studies show that buyers in California will pay about $8 more for their usual $50 eighth of an ounce top shelf cannabis. So increasing the price to that amount because of the taxation that we would have to have on recreational marijuana would be extremely negative. It would have an extremely negative impact on what we're trying to do as far as bring the black market into a legal stance. I think they would still just go under the counter because it would be easier. They'd make more money off of it.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
I've also noticed that although marijuana has been proven to be therapeutic, and we have not considered yet the mental issues that it may cause under recreational use, it's more likely that people that use it under recreational uses can develop schizophrenia and depression, and Harvard Medical and Northwestern University have also noticed that there are changes in brain shape, volume, and density, and an additional IQ drop. And I think that here in Temecula, we have a reputation for having some of the most prestigious high schools, and I think that if we were to legalize it, then the potential risks of teenagers being able to possess it can affect the way that our schools are currently being operated and how well they're doing.
Councilmember Miko?
Another point I would like to bring up is one that brought up by the economic department, how eventually the cost would outrun the benefit, as the tax revenue wouldn't really be beneficial to us, because we think it would create more local businesses, but actually it would just be created by the sales of cannabis and countered by the damages with the lack of productivity and poor mental health. It also would damage our workforce, as stated by them, that our employees would be caught with marijuana and then be fired eventually, and the youth would again be attracted to it.
Councilmember Stoltz?
I would also love to agree with the point that Councilwoman Rodriguez made about the effects of it on mental health. It was also noted in the police report that it would attract the homeless population to these locations and perhaps, increased usage among them. And many of the homeless population here already have problems with substance abuse and mental health issues, so it would only further increase the issue.
And Mayor Pro Tem Renner?
I believe that the paradox we are in as city council members of following the state or federal constitution is an interesting balance to look at because like the other states that have already legalized this drug, we are acting as a test subject in a way, where the federal government is looking to these states to see how their population and their crime rates are developing. And I believe that Temecula is a city that does not need to mess with the balance that we are in currently. Other cities that have lower budgetary opportunities might use this as a way to boost the economy, but currently Temecula is very well off. We're at a very high rate of employment, we're prosperous, and I don't think there's any need to mess with that, to experiment with this as the rest of the state is doing.
Mayor Pro Tem Renner, you mentioned that there are a lot of different states that are moving towards lifting the ban, and that brings me to thinking about the future. If all these states, cities are already lifting the ban, then they can, improve their law enforcement, improve their regulations, and if eventually, if it were to lead to all the states removing the ban, where would that leave us in the terms of how well are we, or how well under control do we have our regulations? How well under control how effective are our law enforcement?
That's a very excellent point. As far as moving forward with, if the rest of the cities around us were to allow cannabis in a recreational setting, I believe that we would have to shift somewhere in the future, but I believe that there's no data that supports how our police or firefighters, the different task force that we have, are able to equip themselves to deal with this problem. So by pushing off the allowance of marijuana for recreational purposes, we are just using it as a way to gather information in case we one day have to become a city that allows that.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Something interesting that I've noticed before is in the Public Works report that they suggested that restrictions of marijuana would mirror the current alcohol regulations that we have, and that just sparks some kind of questions within me because I personally have done research, and it can be concluded that alcohol is definitely much more destructive than much more destructive substance than cannabis, and alcohol leads to crime, violence. It can cause problems within family, and it also has a number of different tolls on health. And I'm curious to see what you think. How is marijuana any different?
Mayor Pro Tem Renner?
I think that there are certain vices that we cannot deny people. Obviously, we tried in the past to eliminate alcohol, and our society, that clearly did not work out. But I think that we can get ahead of the issue of cannabis by regulating legal medical marijuana and allowing us to see the effects of that before we go full frontal into the idea that anyone that is 21 and gets a license for it is able to consume that for recreational use. It would be beneficial to our city to wait on changing our entire dynamic and adding another vice for people to get a hold of easily.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Well, I believe that if we were to only focus currently on medical use, I think that in itself is not enough, because patients that are using it for medical purposes are not using it for the same purposes that a recreational use would be for. And I think that if the ban were to be lifted, that marijuana should replace and reduce alcohol consumption rather than, I guess, complement it or increase the alcohol being consumed by individuals, because people just want some kind of mind-altering substance to use, and it'd be better to push them in a different direction, and perhaps a safer one. I believe that cannabis is much safer in terms of the long-term effects that it can have on an individual. Alcohol is much more damaging in the long run, and they're very almost immediate onset effects. So.
Okay. Respectfully, I would like to point out that marijuana is, as stated earlier, a gateway drug. And like alcohol, if one is to experiment with marijuana and start out because if it becomes something that you can use just for fun, and you start needing something more of a high because you become addicted and that no longer fulfills your needs, if the community then turns to harder drugs, it creates an even bigger problem as far as crime, regulation, and different things like that.
Councilmember Saltz?
I would just like to ask Councilwoman Renner, you also mentioned the prohibition, obviously, with alcohol and how that worked, but also when they had prohibition, didn't it not drive the alcohol business just further down ground and increase the black market and also increase, in turn, the violence of, Al Capone and those kind of people? So would that be the same, in your opinion, if we did that with marijuana?
I see what you're saying, but I believe that at that point, they had already had alcohol in their society. It was a thing that people enjoyed, and then they said, nope, we're taking it away. It is now illegal. So it's the idea of getting someone used to a substance and then taking it away from them. If we allow people in Temecula to recreationally use marijuana, and then we go, oh, that really was not a good idea. Look at the crime rates that have been driven up, the homelessness, the unemployment. We can't go back on that. There's no turning back. If at that point we get into it and we allow people to recreationally use cannabis and they become addicted, they turn to harder drugs, and then we want to ban it, that is not going to stop it. And in that instance, it would be similar to the underground drugs, people obtaining it illegally. But by banning it now and not allowing this to pass, we're getting ahead of it and saying, no, this is not okay within our community because of the standards of safety and family living that we have. And so we're not allowing people to experiment with it in the first place.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Well, I'm a little unsure here because if we were to lift the ban, then wouldn't marijuana in the black market, it would, of course, it is laced with a lot of harmful substances, but if we were to bring it from underground up into a regulated community, wouldn't there be safer, cleaner cannabis for people to consume rather than it be something very illicit and almost lucrative?
And not only is it laced with harmful substances, but it's also prepared in facilities that are dirty, not managed well, and that can have an impact on the product. So do you think it would be better to have a strictly regulated way of controlling what substances are out and who prepares them, who manufactures them, and who distributes them?
That's an excellent point. But I believe that there's still going to be a lot of underground markets for people who aren't willing, like middle class and lower class citizens who aren't willing to pay as much for marijuana. Because we do live in California that has, for the standard of living that we maintain, a higher tax rate. And as I stated earlier, a higher cost of marijuana if we were to provide it recreationally and then tax the living heck out of it. So I do believe that would drive a lot of people to go to seek the cheapest available marijuana, and not necessarily their concern would be, oh, I better make sure there's no laced substances in here. They would be more concerned with how do I get the cheapest, the quickest, the fastest.
And you're saying the quickest and the fastest, but if we have the specific places that they know they can go to and they know that they can get it, then wouldn't that be more convenient for them?
Yes, but if we don't introduce it in the first place, if we try to contain it and push it outside of our community, and then we don't just allow people to experiment with it. There was an instance in one of the communities outside of here where an elderly couple went to a marijuana party, and they did not realize that the food they were eating had marijuana inside of it. The couple is now addicted. Family friends of ours, they are now addicted to marijuana. And by refraining from allowing people to bring that into our community, to have pot parties, as they are called, and introduce anyone over the age of 21 to this drug, then we're just keeping people away from getting addicted in the first place. If you've never had alcohol in your life, then there's no way to be addicted to it because you've never had it.
Councilmember Miko?
To head back to like taxing, if we were to legalize it, I feel like if we put too many regulations and if we tax it too much, no matter what, people will be, they'll be apprehended from it. They won't want to head to legalization, to heading it to a legal way. If we put, it's like not even for the customers who want to go buy it and try to find the cheapest form. You also have to worry about the people who are distributing and dealing it. For those who find it like our taxes are too heavy, then they will never want to head down that road, and then they'll just make their prices cheaper, and then they'll just keep going back.
So do you think that the price, say we changed it from, instead of taxing the product so much, we make the prices to obtain a license to be a distributor, to be a manufacturer, what if we brought those up? Do you think that the price of the license or the permit would outweigh the risk of being caught or wanting to do it underground?
I think it all depends on like how much they're willing to pay. Because if it's too much, then they'll never want to head down to their business because they'll think that what they're already doing is fine enough if they haven't gotten caught yet, and they'll won't not head to a legal route.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Well, going off of that, I think that what we should do is find an appropriate tax, because if we do not tax it appropriately, then the black market will essentially win. But if we do tax it at a reasonable price, then we'll be taking away businesses from cartels, and we'll also be taking away, it will free up some of the money that we spend on having the police going out and busting these people.
Madam Mayor, if I may speak. I apologize.
Sure.
Just to clarify about the taxation, under ALMA and Proposition 64, effective January 1st, 2018, a marijuana excise tax of 15% of the gross sales of any retail sale and a cultivation tax on all harvested marijuana is imposed. It is $9.25 per ounce for the flowers and $2.75 per ounce for the marijuana leaves. So, or just to give you some more information in regards to the taxation of marijuana. And that 15% is not set in stone.
Thank you. Councilmember Saltz?
Thank you. Kind of to loop back to Ms. Renner's point about if you did regulate it, I don't believe that there is enough state, at least level regulations for us to be able, if we were to legalize it, what are the qualifications and regulations? I don't believe we have those in place quite yet.
Correct.
I would agree with that. I'd like to make a motion.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
So going off of what Mrs. Saltz was saying, so then would we be responsible in the city to establish like THC limits and such?
I agree. I think so, if the council is open to it.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Renner?
I make a motion to continue a ban on cannabis within our communities, leaving it only to recreational use, leaving it only to medical use for people with cards that allow them to.
I would like to second that motion.
And the motion has been passed 4 yes, 1 no. It was me. I voted no. And City Manager, do you have a report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I do. I just want to thank everyone at City Hall, all the City Council members, City Manager, and Assistant City Manager for taking us through this time and teaching us all the ways of City Council. I didn't realize there were so many moving parts. And to all my peers, I just want to say excellent job, congratulations, and good luck in any future endeavors. And get all your finals done. Good luck on your AP testing. And I would like to introduce my Assistant City Manager, Jaron Lockery, and his final message.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Council. As a concluding statement, I would just like to thank, of course, City Hall for hosting this wonderful event, especially Aaron Adams and Greg Butler for showing Jay and I the ins and outs of local government. I would also like to thank my amazing AP government teacher, Diana Arbin. She's the reason I'm here. Thanks, Arbin.
Where is she? Well, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. That concludes our meeting.
All right. One thing you found out is things don't always go as planned, right? And you adjust on the fly. That was great. That was great. We rarely finish early, but then again, in the past, a lot of times we've had 2 and 3 agenda items, and we kind of make sure we only used 1 now. I think we did the same last year to keep things flowing. So I mean, you guys were tremendously professional. Everybody. I mean, I don't think there was a weak link anywhere. I like that you all engaged, very much so. Madam Mayor, loved the way you ran the meeting.
Thanks so much.
I would call that soft control. You left no doubt whose meeting it was, and that's what you should do. But you did it in a soft, very respectful way, and you all were very respectful. So, what do you think?
Thank you.
Hard.
I'm still decomposing. I thought it was awesome.
Well, cool. It was awesome. It was.
It was hard. I flipped it in my head like
I know, I
8 or 9
flipped,
times. I was like, should I? But I mean, that's just like good.
I thought about mine. Oh, thank you so much.
That a lot, by the way. Touching each other's mics. Sometimes we turn them off.
Yeah, I personally thought about what I was saying, but then I was like, oh, but I'm representing the people. And so, you know, especially hearing their concerns and everything that the staff report included, that was a lot to take into consideration.
You know what I think was terrific, and the rest of you probably don't know this, but I kind of violated the Brown Act kid-wise.
He's making a mission.
You know, starting at whatever, an hour, 45 minutes before the meeting, and because I thought it was important that we have some idea of the direction that this was going to go, because the meeting would be very different if they were going to choose to permit with regulations. There's so many more questions that needed to be resolved. And if they were going to say, let's continue the ban, it's an easier way to go. Either way, a difficult decision. Well, what looked like unanimously to me, although not rah-rah unanimously, was to permit with heavy regulations. And yet you listened to the staff report, you got far more information than we discussed, because this is where you should hear it. And besides, these guys know more than I do. and it affected your decision making. And that's exactly the way the process is supposed to work. I know Chuck was introduced a minute ago. Chuck Washington, County Supervisor for this, our 3rd district. Chuck spent a good many years, almost 12 years here, sitting where you are with us. Spent 4 years before that doing the same in Murrieta, the only person ever to hold the distinction of being mayor in both cities. But we're fortunate to have him as a Temecula resident now. And then our previous 3rd District Supervisor, Jeff Stone, also a graduate of this dais, is now a state senator. So when he was elected state senator, the governor appointed Chuck to fill his seat, and then Chuck subsequently won re-election or election to that seat as well. So what do you have for us?
Well, I'm just curious. Thank you, Jeff. I loved your comment. That's been the experience ever since I was involved with the program, that students come in and they find out, wow, there's a lot more that goes on at the city level than we ever expected. And one of the things I've always enjoyed about local government is unlike Sacramento or DC, you get to see the effects of what the decisions you make. You see the day-to-day operations of a city or of a county, and unlike the folks that we typically are familiar with, who are just legislators, and you've studied about the three branches of government, at the city and county level, you actually feel all three. You can be an elected representative, you get to have a role to play in the executive branch, and when you're passing ordinances and ruling on particular projects, you're kind of in a quasi-judicial role as well. So, and your constituents know how to find you. I don't know if that's always a good thing, but you're very close to them. But I was kind of curious, of all the students that were here, how many of you, when you first came in yesterday, thought, I want to be one of the council members?
I think at least all of us on the council.
Yeah, there were some behind that are staffers as well, right here.
Yeah? Because I would have thought almost all of you would have thought that you would want to be a council member, right? But after the 2 days, now don't you actually recognize and realize that staff has a very important role to play in helping you arrive at good decisions. They give you good professional advice. And even though you're the ones on TV and making the final decision, you've got a lot of responsibility to take that advice that staff gives you and then also listen to public input and weigh all of that, as Jeff said, and try to arrive at a good decision for your community and your constituents. I always, and this has always been the culture here for us in Temecula, is that we try to check our egos at the door, and we try to remember that staff is trying to give us a good, sound, professional recommendation. They're there to support you. They're there to help you arrive at that good decision. Don't throw them under the bus. No. And that never occurred here. But some jurisdictions, some jurisdictions it does. Sometimes people get in that position and they feel a need to sort of use that position to fight City Hall. and it's counterproductive. I'm very proud of the years I got to serve here. There was 5 of us that served together for a full decade, 10 years, and that's unheard of. But when you serve with people and you get to know each other and you know kind of how they think and you try to find ways to work together, you end up producing better results for your constituents. So very exciting to be here today.
Thank you, Chuck. And one thing I was remiss and didn't say is that if you like the program, you can thank Chuck Washington because he brought it here to us. So he was the originator of the program.
But also, like I just said, it's staff that makes these things happen. We have the luxury of coming up with some pretty good ideas, but none of it happens without staff and city manager and assistant city manager and city clerk.
All of them.
And all of them.
All of them.
All of them.
You know,
Just
it's
awesome.
as we talked about, I think yesterday a little bit, all it takes to fill your seats is to be 18 and be a registered voter in Temecula. For what they do, they need an awful lot of education, degrees, and experience before they get to this level and this point. So, well said. You know, I think we have a rare opportunity with some time. Let's hear from our real department heads. Not that you're not real. You know, whoever. Aaron, you want to just your thoughts on the kids? Excuse me, the young adults. You have to forgive me. I keep saying that.
I thought you all did a great job as well. It's not an easy thing to sort of step in here and
crash course in less than 48 hours on what we do. And if we left you with anything, I hope it was there's a lot of dedicated folks here inside this building that contribute to the quality of life that you talked about today. And we have a lot of pride in what we do. My observations, and I got to spend time with Jaron and Jay, and I thought you guys both did a good job behind the scenes. And we talk a lot about that there's the council meeting, which is the business meeting. But from my perspective, the 2 weeks worth of work, the staff work, is far more intense than the actual meeting. And if we've done our job, we've spent a lot of agonizing discussions at the staff level about who's going to present, what it's going to look like, what's our recommendation, how long is it going to be, what order are we going to take it in. I get into the minutia because I want this meeting, when we bring it forward and the lights go on and the cameras are on, to go as smooth as possible. Now, you can only control so much. But if we've done our job as a staff and as a team, we've set the city council up for success. So you guys got a little taste of that, and the decisions will be made, and we will execute the policy. But I thought you did a great job. I agree with Jeff. You did a great job running the meeting, Madam Mayor. I thought the staff, you guys all participated, and I couldn't be more proud. So well done.
Agreed.
You have to. Okay, since he handed me the mic. It's interesting to watch you all do your job up here and struggle with sort of the same thing we do. I love the fact that you're handed a difficult item and then all of you turned to staff and said, "What do you recommend?" And then staff sort of kicked it back to you and said, "We recommend you debate this and figure it out." It's... not always do. I mean, a lot of times we will get a staff recommendation out of this, and they spend more time on this than any of us can, and so we take that recommendation very seriously. But there's a lot of cases where it's left up to this sort of debate. And the challenge, I think, and you saw all of this, is that not only do you represent your own opinion, your own ideals, and position on things, but you, like you said, you also represent your community and your constituents. And so it's a tough thing to try and balance those two, and say, do I know more than all of the people who came up here and spoke about an issue, or do I know more than the staff have recommended? And at the end of the day, you all took all of that stuff into consideration, then followed what you thought were the best decisions. And at the end of the day, that's as good as you can do as a council member. Staff, you guys did a great job of giving them all the tools, and I'm impressed. You actually swayed their opinion. I mean, everybody came in here with one perspective, more or less, and you guys helped them have a better understanding of it. It's not easy, and it's even harder when you have to do it in public. There's a lot of things you wish you could say and wish you could be a little bit more candid about, but you realize it's being recorded and there's people in the audience, and it'll be on YouTube at some point, and so you have to temper all of that and maintain that professionalism, and you all did an outstanding job.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Stu. Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, well, I posted on my Facebook page. I have a Facebook page called Temecula Stew, which I post a lot of what happens in the city. And so I posted about this event that we're doing and the topic you were charged with. And I actually got a couple of negative comments about they shouldn't have to deal with that. And it's like, and I responded to them and said, no, this is the generation that's gonna have to deal with this.
Yep.
And so I thought you did a great job. You guys were very insightful. You really delved in, and I thought it was great. I mean, and I don't want to make an opinion on what your decision was, but you guys did an excellent job. So congratulations.
Greg, any words? Interesting to hear from, all of our department heads. What were your own experiences with the cities that you worked with?
I was extremely interested in the way the discussion goes, because we're going to have this same conversation next week. And
I only hope we do as well.
Did you guys get that? 1 hour, 1 day. But no, Jaron and Jay, it was a pleasure to introduce them into the inner workings of the background of what's going on. We explained to them from Aaron and my position, a perfect council meeting is we don't say a word. All the homework has been done ahead of time. We've provided all the information. And yes, typically we do bring forward a recommendation. We come forward with, our recommendation is to install a crosswalk in front of Great Oak. Our recommendation is to do this. And so this particular style of a meeting is not one that we prefer. We prefer to kind of have an anticipated knowledge of what the outcome's going to be. So kudos to you guys for all the discussion, all the insightful questions, professionally questioning each other. You'll watch, that's what these folks do all the time. And so it was fascinating to watch, and I hope our meeting next week goes just as smoothly.
It won't.
So, did you all surprise yourselves?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Especially the fact that you really did kind of change direction. And was it the staff? Was it the staff reports that
Oh, yeah.
Definitely, high influence.
So staff, see how important
Oh,
it is to have the facts and to do your research and present it with the council. You guys were awesome, and you were very thoughtful. Sometimes when you sit up there and you realize you're on TV, it's hard to listen to what your colleagues are saying at the same time you're trying to formulate your own opinion and think of, because you do think in advance, hopefully, about how you're going to say things, because you remember you're live on television, so you have to be very thoughtful in that. At the same time, you have to listen and formulate that opinion. You did a great job. I'm very, very proud of each and every one of you, and we had a great time, too, getting you ready.
Anybody think for council and staff, everybody, now that it's done, what you might have wanted to say and didn't? Good, yeah.
Well, for me, it was just technical issues and just going through the whole, just trying to understand what I needed to do and how to do it. And I think it goes along with the experience as well, and just trying to understand it. I mean, it was a big crash course kind of deal. But overall, I mean, it was a pretty fun experience, and I got to learn a lot from this. And I really want to thank everybody out here, working hard and getting everything together. I mean, it was really fun. I enjoyed it.
This is a question we'll probably discuss a little bit more at lunch also, but how do you feel this experience, for all of you, how do you feel it fared in relation to what your expectation was coming into it, or about how cities are run in general, or this city in general?
So let's start with Ty, and this is a debrief question that we go around the room, so all the student participants have an opportunity to say something. So Ty, why don't you go ahead and start, since you raised your hand, and then we'll start with Waleed over there, and we'll just make our way around.
So I've watched a few city councils, and I was like, okay, that seems pretty easy. I could talk.
Councils in different cities, or
it's Temecula City Council.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've watched them, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty easy. I could do that. And now that I'm finally up here and I've had a discussion, I'm like, this is way more intense, especially with this type of subject. I was like, I thought I'd just raise a magic wand and be like, all right, that's what we're gonna do for the city. But realizing that there's so much more to it, it's incredible.
But you found you could do it.
I found I could do it.
Yeah. So, great, and I would say that about all of you. Cool.
Waleed?
I definitely expected it to be a really fun experience, just from how we discussed it the previous day. And I was very happy to work with the people I have, and everyone here. It's been a pleasure to be around such a great staff, and as well as you guys as well. Mr. Hawkins has been very inspiring to me, and I'm definitely going to take a lot of the experience that I made just in terms of collaboration, things like that, with me for the future. And I just really love how our city operates. It's been a wonderful experience.
So Waleed, what's one new thing that you learned that you hadn't thought about before?
Definitely the emphasis on the community. I saw that it was a lot more deep than I thought. I mean, I know that we do a lot for the community here, but it's just when you go into in depth how it works and everything, it's been really fascinating.
Yeah, I did not know what to expect really. I had no
prior knowledge or any experience in a city hall meeting. However, what I did like to see was the behind the scenes before actually seeing a real meeting, which was kind of a different perspective on things. But what I wasn't expecting was just how the departments are intertwined with one another, and really how the information that we research and that we come up with helps the decision of the 5 council members.
Critical. In fact, and keep in mind that we meet generally every 2 weeks, and depending on the calendar, but so our staff goes through that every time we have a council meeting, and the issues are always different, and sometimes they have to thoroughly research something that they may not be that familiar with, because it doesn't come up very often. Sometimes it's easier than that. But for the experience that you all have had working with this staff, you won't find a better one anywhere. It really is an incredible team that Aaron has put together. It's amazing. I mean that very sincerely. Yeah.
Well, from what I've found for this entire experience was, in one aspect, I knew that, you know, the community, you know, the whole, you know, city council and the staff behind it all, it has a big impact on Temecula, but I didn't know like how it goes about its work. You know, I didn't understand like the amount of depth, you know, that had. So that was completely fascinating to me, and it was really interesting, and I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed learning about this, and I'll come out of this experience knowing more and telling all my friends about it, and saying everything. And then I really want to thank Mr. Luke Watson and Mr. Brandon. It's your last name. It's okay. I would like to thank Mr. Luke and Mr. Brandon for really helping me out there, and I want to help out Mr. Slow, who offered me this opportunity to do this. It's been an amazing experience.
Great. Yeah, you know, and keep this experience with you. You will, but not everybody gets to do it, and it is pretty special. So, Eliane?
It was definitely more complex than I had expected, and I didn't realize how difficult it would be to, you know, really rationalize and use the information that the staff gave the city council to conclude, you know, and make a decision. And I also think that it's really cool how you and Marianne are like best friends. It's great. I'm just like, wow, I definitely want to come back to city government, like after I finish getting my college education finished. And yeah, it's definitely been a memorable experience, and 10 out of 10 would do it again. Like I totally would do it again. It was great.
We all feel that way from time to time. We call them re-elections. But I have to tell you, quite honestly, in our interaction over the last 2 days, I was a little concerned about you because you're a little quiet.
Yeah.
Wrong. Okay, no, great. I mean that in a very good way. You just took the bit and ran with it. You all did, but I expected it. I wasn't quite sure, so great. Great. Nothing wrong with that. And we already heard from Ty. Jamila, Madam Mayor.
I've seen Parks and Recreation, the show. So I knew that the staff was not an easy job. So I was like, hey, I'm going to run for city council because that is a lot of work. I didn't think that this would be as hard as it was. I thought that I would be more prepared coming in. I thought we'd have more rehearsals on what to say and, you know, the proceedings. Did not. But you know, it was all thinking on your feet, and it's really tough to make a decision right in front of people. I came in thinking more about, because I personally was against, you know, I wanted to vote to keep the ban, and then during our little meeting beforehand, I was like, well, I think this would be better for the public. And contrary to what actually everyone on the council said, the staff report made me feel like, well, this actually is better for the community for Temecula, which obviously everyone disagreed with. I just think it's really interesting to see how the public's opinion and how the staff report can change my opinion, because I was like, well, but now I feel still like it's the right decision. Well, it doesn't.
Nothing wrong with dissent.
Yeah.
Ever. Dissent and debate always makes the process better and makes for better decisions. Okay. Thanks. Michaela?
This experience definitely taught me, obviously, like I've had to do a lot of different leadership activities and different things, but this collaboration and like being super quick on your feet and just having to adapt under fire and just like keep going, keep rolling with it. You mess up and you're like, oh, but I gotta keep moving, you know? Just that whole idea and the way that you can understand what someone's saying without them implicitly saying it, because our staff, we were like, hey, like trying to get a recommendation out of them through our questions. We were like, hey, do you have an opinion? And then it was just kind of up to us to use what we thought they thought to the best of our ability.
Decision makers. Remember,
Yeah.
the policy makers and the staff implements your policy.
Yeah, we just did the best that we had with what we got, and it was a great experience.
Good. Appreciate that. I think you did a very good job early on of really kind of signaling what your feelings were and then making the case for that. And I think that's good. That's what we strive to do. So it's good. Interesting you talk about being nimble on your feet and thinking on your feet. We usually associate that, we know you have to do that here, but we usually associate staff as being very well prepared, ready, they have their presentation, they make it, and then you ask them a question. And they have to be equally nimble and prepared, and everybody showed that. So it is interesting. Hope.
So I went into this, and I had only been to one city council meeting, and I went with my dad because he was here on business, and I just remember some people being very angry and kind of yelling at you guys, and I was like, oh, that doesn't, how much are they getting paid for this? So then Mr. Pano told me, oh yeah, you're gonna do this, and I was like, oh, okay, this sounds fun, get to miss 2 days of school. But then I really learned about how much work goes into it, not only from our side, but obviously from staff, and walking in, obviously everybody does have their own preset, I was like, oh, I'm probably leaning more towards this way, but in the end, it was really the staff that helped us formulate these opinions, and I really didn't know that, before I was just kind of like, oh, these people just seem to be making a decision, just like with the 5 of them, but in reality, it's not only the staff, it's also the community that comes and talks, like Mr. Dad, I was like, okay, that sounds like a lot like my dad,
Yeah, we generally get the same preparation from our staff. Usually there's less interaction here at the meeting because they prepare us very well before the meeting. We see the staff report, for instance, our meeting next Tuesday where we'll be handling the same issue. We'll get the staff report later today, right? Friday at 4. Right? Huh? 4 o'clock. Right at 4 o'clock, so on the Thursday prior to, because these guys have had nothing to do for the last couple of days, right? So I'm sure that was ready beforehand, but, and then we go through it as thoroughly as we can, and it certainly raises questions, and we'll pose those questions individually and somewhat privately to staff. So by the time we come here, a lot of our questions are answered already. But we also hear from the public. We may hear a couple of different things in the staff report, and so questions, certainly always come up. But the plan for us is always to be as prepared as we possibly can and have the meeting go as smoothly as it can. You were able to do that on very short notice, so I mean that's really good it's good because the job everybody did. Jay, what you got?
Again, thank you so much to everyone. I will say I am a very analytical leader, so when Mr. Adams and Mr. Butler said that we had approximately 8 hours to do what you normally do in 2 weeks, I kind of had a mini panic attack yesterday. Because
yeah, even with 2 weeks, we have.
So it was definitely a very memorable and enjoyable and informative experience because collaborating, similar to Camilla, I am a Parks and Rec kid. That's how I kind of found like a passion for government. And so sitting in the back and collaborating with the different department leads and hearing what they brought to the table and then having to give feedback, I was kind of blown away by just how quickly everything went and just how everyone had to keep moving. There's no dull point. Yep. And so that was definitely the best part about this whole experience.
Cool. Jared?
Going into this, I was definitely expecting a lot of the majority of the power and workload to fall onto City Council, but it was very interesting to learn how much influence the staff and community has on day-to-day decisions. and just experiencing the behind the scenes of all the preparation that goes into this meeting. It was a very unique experience that I'm grateful for.
Good. You found out why, generally speaking, your jobs command six-figure salaries and we make $600 a month. Sam?
What I thought was most interesting about this experience is I kind of like most people that came in with this idea of how stuff worked, but also I was completely blind. So yesterday when our city clerk asked us who wanted to be her, I was like, I'll do that. I have no idea what her job does, but I was like, why not? Like, I'm gonna kind of go outside my comfort zone. And what I loved most about doing that job is that it reminded me so much of what I already do as a technician for productions at our school for shows, that there's all these behind the scenes working parts that no one really talks about or mentions, and then it all gets thrown together super quickly, and then it comes to these meetings. And then you don't really think about, looking at these council members, all the different work that was put into it. So I really enjoyed seeing all this like extra stuff that goes into it. And for me, who wants to major in political science and maybe one day sit in that kind of position, it was super amazing to see how it all worked.
If you were out of your comfort zone, nobody knew it. I mean that. She was the best city clerk we've had for students.
It was like you were born in that position.
Yeah, no, really. So it was, I forget who said it, but somebody told me once years ago that one of the secrets of success is to get out of your comfort zone at least once every day.
Yeah.
So that's good. Kevin?
Yeah, so for me, definitely from a staff perspective, there's just so many things that go into it. You have to do the research for the council meetings. You have to make sure every other department has what they need from you. Making sure your own department is like structured. And then in the back of your mind, you even have your EOS or EOS, where the emergency services, just in case anything goes wrong. You have so many responsibilities, and you just kind of have to take it each responsibility at a time, making sure that you got everything ready, prepared, and then you come to the meeting and you have to be the expert. That's like your thing you have to do. So I really think it was just an eye-opening experience of how much responsibility each member of the staff has, and then how you have to help each department and then help council in the end.
Great. Molly?
Well, like everybody else up here who watched Parks and Rec, they obviously got me interested in government. And then this definitely made me more interested in government. Seeing all the working parts and being able, being exposed to everything that everybody does and what a city manager does and what public works do and community services and fire chief and police chief and everything that staff does and city council and how they all work together was very interesting to see and helps me kind of formulate what I want to do later in life, which I thank everybody here for. It means a lot, so thank you.
We hear a couple of those comments every year. Certainly it's very gratifying to all of us to hear it. If ever we can provide any help to you or any of you, if you choose to pursue that, certainly we're here to help with that. I have to laugh a little bit. Several of you have mentioned the TV show, Parks and Rec. And I don't watch it, but I've seen it a couple of times. And I don't watch it because I always thought, rather than make government look silly, they could have a much funnier show if there was much more realism in it. Because we could find a lot of stuff, right, Kevin? Yeah. Right? That's legitimately funny and, show the intellect for what it is. But anyway, I don't know anything about TV anyway. Joey.
Yeah, no, I was definitely very surprised when I first started, just within the fire department, because my dad's a firefighter, and I thought I knew everything there was to know about how it functions and how it works, but I was blown away at how much more intricate and how much more complicated that it really is, just with the administration, not even counting the actual going out and putting out fires. And yeah, I was also Parks and Rec kid, I was when I first walked in, I was trying to find which council member matched which person on the show. I was like, who's gonna be the Jeremy Jam?
That's
yeah,
cute.
Definitely fun.
We won't ask you to say that publicly, though.
Yeah.
All right. No, thank you. You beat me to it.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I didn't talk during the occasion, which is exactly how I hoped the meeting would go. especially one thing I definitely learned is the less you have to talk to reach a conclusion here, the better it means it's going. It was really fun and an interesting experience, you know, working with Fire Chief Mann over here, learning stuff with him from the actual fire captain, which is over there, and the chief. Thank you so much. It was such a eye-opening and a fun experience to learn how, because I was interested. I got the paper that said fire captain, and I was like, it's cannabis. What do they do? And it's like, it's crazy. Like, I just didn't understand. It was amazing, like Jay said, to see how all the parts work together. I was definitely really interested in government now, even if I wasn't as much before.
Thank you.
So, like, living in Temecula, I never really noticed how much went into it. I would just see, like, oh, look, there's a stoplight on La Sabina now. How'd that get there? You know? But I never realized how much work goes into it and how much planning ahead and how much care you guys have for Temecula. And it's so much more than I imagined. And going into this, I didn't know what we were doing. I thought we were
Neither do we.
I thought that we were just gonna like get assigned a person. We just shouted them around all day. So I was like, please, chief, we might arrest people. That's cool. But it's cool that we got the opportunity to like not only see what they do, but actually do it ourselves and participate and get an actual experience of what it's like. So
Cool.
thank you.
I want you behind you.
I just want to say that I didn't really know. I've worked with you, Marianne, for a couple ASB events, but before that, I didn't really know any of the staff, except for Mr. Adams, of course. You guys really have a passion for the city, which shows. So that was something really exciting to see. Like, you guys love working together. You were always, just this morning, walking through, we passed by so many people, and everyone, good morning, good morning, good morning. Like, everyone says hello, and I just really liked, I didn't know that it wasn't just business here, not all the time. Like, it's really nice that, yeah, it's a family. It's really nice knowing if I wanted to pursue this career, I can also, like, have fun with it, and it's not always horrible.
You raised an interesting question. Yeah, we'll go here in a minute, but we get asked a lot, you know, what's the most important thing about being a local elected official, a councilman? What one characteristic is most important? And for me, the answer is very clear, but I want to hear from you guys. What do you think? The most important characteristic? I didn't hear you. Humor, that helps. Sometimes you have to have it.
Passion?
Passion, always.
Harmony.
All good things.
Determination.
Good. Consideration. See, I would say the most important thing, and I've always said this, is you have to love Temecula. Yeah. And if you have that in your heart, you can't help but be a good council member or staff member. Because everything else flows from that, and that's where we've always been very, very fortunate. And it's up to the electorate to see that in candidates, too. Certainly was something to look for. Anyway, to be continued.
Yeah. One of my favorite things I learned on this 2-day journey was the motto, Temecula Safe. And I know it's super important here. Actually, truth be told, I was told that I'd get brownie points if I said that, so. No, in all honesty, my dad's a safety consultant. My mom is an HR director. Typical paranoid parents, you know, trying to keep me safe. I know all the works that go into safety, so the police department, fire department, even the community services. It's, like I said in my statement, #1 priority is the safety of the people. And it's easy not to care, like just to let things pass, you know. But like you said before, passion is everything. I say it all the time. No one's going to do anything if they don't have the passion for it. And truly running a city, you really have to have passion for it. And that's the main thing I learned here today.
Great.
I had no idea how interconnected everything was, and like intertwined. I had no idea that like the marijuana would have anything to do with community service, and so it's just interesting to see how everything's connected and all the like little wheels turning to move everything as a whole forward.
Yeah, it's really interesting that that you were considering this topic, because I think clearly one of the most challenging issues that we have faced in our almost 30 years now of cityhood. maybe not the most important issue, although up there, but the most difficult to deal with because it's just so complex and we're not getting any guidance from anywhere except for us, from our own staff, because the state is just not really helping us a whole lot, which is not unusual.
I think what interested me the most was the fact that there's such an emphasis on the federal and state governments, but when it comes down to it, it's the local governments and your community that has such an impact on your community and you personally, and it was really neat to be a part of that and see how you directly impact the people you see every day of your life, and you can't get much better than that.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, very often when we're out in the community, you never really have too much time where somebody doesn't come up to you and wants to talk, and that's fine. I mean, that's the job. That's what we're here for. And so my wife and I used to joke a lot, still do, that sometimes we'll go to the grocery store together because that's a date for us because we don't have any time, you know. And invariably, somebody will start talking to me, and she'll take the cart and she'll say, "I'll see you later," and she knows the drill, you know. And I'll be half an hour talking to somebody, but it's part and parcel, and you know, we can complain about it or we can embrace it, and we choose to embrace it.
Tom doesn't go to the store with me anymore.
Yeah. Truth be told, neither do I anymore. So thank you for those comments. Did we get everybody?
Do you care if I say one more thing?
Yeah. I can't. No, go ahead.
I just want to congratulate all of us. I mean, we're all seniors, right? This is all seniors. Like, we made it this far. Look at us. Like, come on. Round of applause. Come on.
Hear, hear.
No, like, truth be told, like, I have to, like, we're all going places. Like, look at us. Like, we're all very professional, very educated, you know, well-versed, and just want to congratulate us again. And good luck wherever you guys go.
Years ago, I had I took a weekend of leadership training that was kind of bizarre. You know, it was one of these outside things, and it was outside of Las Vegas, and they used an expression that's a Japanese word, dantatsu, and it means simply the best of the best, and that's what we experienced in you guys, and so it's cool.